Hello and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to be talking all about growing a music business. If you don't already know who I am, my name is Gwethan. I'm a music business consultant and growth operator, and I run Hendrick Academy, which is an online music business school and consultancy firm where we help music businesses build, grow, and scale. So if that's something you're interested in, hit the link in the description and let's dive straight into it. So the first thing about growing a music business is you have to understand that this is all about testing. Growth rarely feels like progress, and most of the time it feels like nothing is working. But this is normal and it's not failure. You know, so many times things don't go to plan. Like, I'll just tell you that now, things don't go to plan, and because of that I feel like I'm moving sideways. I feel like I'm not making any progress. But when I actually zoom out, I realize that actually, yeah, I have come super far. I have developed a lot, but there's still some kind of like mental thing in me where it feels like I'm not making progress. But you have to bear in mind that, especially if you're like a beginner to business, that what you think is going to happen usually isn't what happens. So you have to really plan and prepare for the future, but you also have to kind of have a level of risk management and have an aspect of kind of definitely have optimism, but don't be over optimistic in what you can achieve, and kind of operate in a way where you're not going to massively overextend yourself. You're not going to start running before you can even walk, because then that will cause you to, damage your legs, which is ultimately the thing that keeps your business driving forward. So on this note, to get started, is if you feel like you're not making progress, you are, because you've obviously already gone from having a business idea to building it into at least something that's bare bones. That's why you're here. You're looking to grow something, and you can't grow something that doesn't exist. So that means you've brought something into existence, which is one of the most challenging things. You've taken something that doesn't exist and you've made it exist, which sounds simple, but that's a huge thing. So if you're already at this phase, then huge congratulations, because not many people make it this far. And the fact that you're here watching this shows that you're committed. It shows that you're capable of building something and then growing and scaling it. So don't be too hard on yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you're not exactly where you want to be. When I started out, I thought I'd be way further ahead than I am now, but that doesn't mean that, I still kind of beat myself up about it. Not necessarily like that, but I still kind of am hard on myself. But then I do realize that I look around myself. I've built myself an amazing life. I've moved to my dream city. I study at somewhere that is just beautiful, and I've come very far for my age, and I still have like this thing inside me that feels like I'm not doing enough, which can be beneficial to keep you moving forward and to keep you making progress, but it can also be detrimental to your health and to your productivity and to just your overall well-being. So a minute ago, I spoke about risk management, and to manage risks and to mitigate risks, you want to stay lean. So being lean is all about operating in a way that doesn't massively overextend yourself with expenses. So you don't want to overspend early. You don't want to be like, damn, next month I'm going to make 10 grand, so I'm going to spend 10 grand right now, because then next month you might not make 10 grand, and then you've just dug yourself a hole. You want to avoid stacking tools and costs. You want to keep your setup simple, and you want to focus on what actually generates revenue. So lean gives you more time to figure things out, and burn rate kills most businesses early. Businesses that overextend themselves, that reach out too much, that grow too fast, too quickly, they just fall apart. Imagine building a house on concrete foundations, but you haven't allowed the concrete to dry yet. You're building it on wet foundations. The house is going to sink and it's going to collapse. So what I'm trying to say is, I feel like where a lot of people in music especially, they get distracted by beautiful toys, and don't worry, I've been guilty of it myself, as you can see, and they kind of invest in things which they sound amazing and they do make your craft like 10-15% better, but they ultimately don't drive revenue. And if you focus too early on investing in the wrong things, then you could be sat on all of this cool equipment, but then you don't have cash flow, and then you might have to sell the equipment, which would be heartbreaking. I know how gutting that is, and I don't want that for you. So you just need to make sure that your cash flow is far beyond your expenses, which I know sounds pretty basic, but ultimately in business, you have to start doing things a lot of the time, right? When you're a business owner, you start doing things yourself. You do everything yourself, which can be an extreme bottleneck, which I will come back to. But if you start paying people to edit your videos before you're even making money, then a month might go by, you spend X amount on editing videos, but then you've made no money, and then you run out of money, and then so you need to be able to run it as a one-man army kind of for a little while, and then start growing that. But I'll come onto that point now. So I think a huge thing about growing a music business is kind of contradictory to what I just said in a way, but not really. I'll explain. Is don't try and do everything yourself. In the early days, you're probably going to be doing most things alone. But what I've realized is, as soon as you can identify what it is that you're good at, and then really focus on those, and also then focus on the activities that drive revenue and drive the business the most, if you can focus on that and perhaps get a partner involved, or get somebody involved that can kind of take over the areas that you're not good at, you identify your weaknesses and you kind of outsource them. If you can outsource them in a way that doesn't cost loads of money, that isn't detrimental to the business's growth, then that is obviously the dream. Like so many of my students, and also myself, like the bottleneck that we reach is doing everything alone, and it gets to a point where you are your own limit, and you can't break through a ceiling, you can't grow, you can't scale, because you're just doing everything alone. So that's kind of like my first point for scaling, which will be the next video. But I feel as soon as you can work with other people, and if you have people that you can actually trust, I'll make a video about how to hire people and how to get people in your business to help you. But if you have people that share the same vision and that you trust, that you can work with, that will enable you to grow far more significantly in a shorter amount of time. But just don't do it in a way where you're spending lots of money on paying salaries before you've even made a penny. That's a trap that you don't want to fall into. So the next stage of growing a music business is obviously all about client acquisition. You need a consistent way to get clients, not random inquiries, not word of mouth. You need to focus on content, which gives you inbound clients, outreach, which means that you're actually messaging potential leads or clients, you're actually reaching out to people, you're not waiting for them to come to you, and also then sales calls and closes. And I'll talk about how to sell in the music industry in a separate video as well, because that needs its own entire video. But you want to remember that conversations are the goal, not views. You could get 1,000 views on a video, but then if no one responds to it, or you're not interacting with any of those people that watch it, then that's not great. A method that I really like to get people in the DMs is using metrical. So you might see on Instagram where people say comment X and I'll send you Y, or DM me this and I'll do this. That's a great way to get people in your DMs and in your messages, so then you can actually have real conversations with them. Because remember, business, even though a lot of it is based online, business is all about human connection. And if you're too scared to outreach to people, or if you're too scared to have these conversations, and again, I've been guilty of this myself, then you're going to struggle to actually get clients. And ultimately, clients means money, which means cash flow, which means growth, which means everything else. So the number one priority really is generating clients. And to do that, the best way obviously online is to run ads, is to create content. Don't necessarily run ads too early until you have a structured offer. And if this is all confusing and you have no idea how to run ads, even how to make content, Hendrick Academy is built exactly for that. So hit the link in the description. But I think clients, obviously you need clients. And even in the very early days, if you have like an offer idea that you don't necessarily know if you can charge for yet, a great thing to do is just to reach out to someone that you can get value for, and kind of work for them, not necessarily for free, but without exchanging money, with exchanging value. So one of my first clients, I didn't charge him, but he gave me free music production lessons in exchange for me helping him build his online business, which was amazing, because then he didn't have to risk anything giving money to somebody new, but then it also meant that I could get value while still doing work, because ultimately there's only so much time in a day and you don't want to be working completely for free. And then this also then means that you get social proof, you can get testimonies, you get reviews, and then that ultimately gives more trust to you, and then that drives more sales, that brings in more clients. So don't be afraid to work for free, but when I say for free, you should still be getting value in some way. But ultimately, clients is a huge thing, and you don't know what your clients or what your ideal customer profile, what they actually want, until you start working with people. You can have an idea of what they want, you can do all the market research in the world, but as soon as you actually start working with clients and you actually start working with people who you are targeting, then you really get a greater understanding of their wants and needs and struggles, so that then ultimately you can help them with that. So the next topic is all about metric tracking. You want to simplify this and not overcomplicate it, and you want to track what only matters. So leads per week, calls booked, show up rate, close rate, revenue. You may also want to track how much you're spending on ads, and then how many leads that's generating, and then how many calls that's generating, etc. And I find really useful tracking leads, because you can track it in a way where you have their name, their phone number, their contact, if you like what you contact them on. So it could be like via phone, via WhatsApp, via email, and then you can say like their budget, or you can say whether you've spoken to them, whether you called them, whether you've closed them, whether you booked a call with them. And it's just super useful, because then it also means that, say in a couple months time, you go back and contact leads from the past, you then have all of these people in the spreadsheet, and you kind of know them before you even speak to them. So tracking leads is huge, and that's something that I find really valuable. And again, if you want help with that, Hendrick Academy is built exactly for you. So then I spoke briefly about ads, but when you run ads, if you're in a position to run ads, if you've perhaps had like 1 or 2 people in and you've got like a functioning offer, but you actually want to grow it, then ads are definitely the way. And you want to pair ads with organic content, with YouTube, perhaps with short form social media, so that ads get eyes on you, and then when people click on your profile, they see what you're all about, they see your content, they start to trust you, they follow you, they interact with you, they perhaps apply to your offer, all of those sorts of things. But with ads, you don't expect them to necessarily work immediately, because your first ad campaigns should be treated primarily as data collection. You know, even if you run a campaign for a month and you get maybe only a few leads and you don't get any sales, that I know that will feel crushing, because I've been there myself, and it will feel crushing, but it's data. You know, you're understanding what works, what doesn't work. You can then see, okay, so this many people actually viewed the ad, and then this many people viewed the website, but then only this many people applied or converted, or, you know, actually came into the funnel. So if you have lots of views on your website, but then not many applications, then you can understand that it's a website problem. Whereas if you just don't get much engagement or many views with the actual ad itself, then you understand it's an ad problem. Or if the people that are actually coming in and engaging with you from the ads aren't the people that you actually want to work with, then you also understand that it's a messaging problem within the ad. So all of these things are just all about testing and trial and error and trying out new things. And again, like I mentioned with a client, you can plan, but ultimately you only learn when you actually do something. You only learn by doing in business. And, you know, it's difficult to wrap your head around, but it's just the truth. So like I said, ultimately with ads, you are testing. You want to test hooks, creatives. If you don't know what creatives are, creatives is the actual media of the ad, so like the video or the photo, audiences, who you're actually targeting, and messaging in the ad. So most ads do fail at first, and especially if you're kind of watching this or you're new to business, you're not going to be a meta ads genius, you're not going to be a marketeer genius, and that is completely fine. That is perfectly okay. So yeah, just don't beat yourself up, and don't think that just because an ad campaign hasn't delivered you the desired result that you're an absolute failure, because that's just not the case. And if you want help optimizing ads, creating ads, if you even want help being able to track how many views are on your website, like I mentioned earlier, and then how many people convert from your ad, then again, Hendrick Academy is your best friend. So click the link in the description, apply. You can have a call with me. I can assess who you are, what you do, how we can help you. And even if you don't join the school, the idea of the call is that you still walk away with some value to implement into your business. So you want to test and you want to iterate. So this could be launching multiple variations of the ad. Perhaps you have slightly different hook, slightly different opening, slightly different background music, slightly different captions on the ad, maybe a slightly different thumbnail, maybe one is longer, maybe one is shorter, maybe one has only a photo with text, maybe one has videos. And you want to, when you're testing, you can then quickly identify what works, what doesn't work, and then you can eliminate what doesn't work, and then ultimately you can double down on what does work. In a previous video, I spoke about doubling down on what works, and that's vital. You know, you can only do that, you can only double down, and you can only identify what works and what doesn't work by just doing it and just getting experience and getting data. So don't get too emotionally attached to ads, because I appreciate they can take a long time to edit and come up with and put together. But yeah, just don't get too married to certain ads and just follow the data. That's the biggest advice that I can give you. And you want to pair ads with organic traffic, with organic content, because organic content, as I mentioned before, it creates your personal brand. It creates authority. It develops trust, and it shows people that you're a real human being. If they can listen to you speaking for 20 minutes like this video, then they're going to be much likely to want to engage with you and interacting with you. But if you just run ads, people don't necessarily know who you are, so they're going to struggle to trust you in that sense. So organic content builds trust, and amplify what already works. So the rule here is, if it doesn't work organically, ads won't save it. Whereas if your messaging and your content is doing okay organically, then yeah, you can just pump that right up by making similar style ads. Obviously, you want ads to be like a lot shorter than like average content, but yeah, you want to take what you learn from your organic content and transfer that into ads. But then also you want to learn a lot from your market research, where I've got a video on this. It's 2 videos ago. It's all about monetizing your music business skills. That will teach you all about market research and messaging and all sorts. Again, also Hendrick Academy will help you with that. So you want to have a campaign mindset. Each campaign is an experiment. Each experiment gives feedback, and feedback improves the next campaign. Remember, you're building a system, you're building a legacy, you're building a long-term vision. You're not just chasing one win. As I keep drilling into your mind, things don't work, and that is perfectly okay, because then you can make an improvement for the next thing. So from campaign to campaign, things are going to change, things are going to improve, and you're going to get to a point where it's locked and it's optimized and it's working and it's flowing. And when you're at that point, you will feel amazing, but it could take a lot of time and work and energy to get there. And that's just what business is. You know, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. But if you're even watching this right now, it shows that you're committed, you're dedicated, and you have what it takes to make it happen. You just need patience, you need determination, you need grit. And I know all of those things are very difficult, and I know that when it feels like nothing's working, it can be very, very difficult to keep moving forward, but you can do it. Of course you can do it. There's so many people out there in the world making lots and lots of money in this industry, and there's no reason why you can't as well. You just have to keep believing in yourself and keep learning and growing and implementing and changing and adapting, because we all know that the industry, the economy, everything else changes rapidly, and if you can adapt with it, then you'll be fine. Okay, so the real skill here isn't about running ads. The real skill is all about testing, learning, improving, and repeating. And yeah, just revising and just adapting, and you know, just doing, learning, implementing, adapting, and then you might find, oh, this works, okay, this doesn't work. So the real skill is just being able to test and learn, and to just keep going, and to not think that because you've made something that is going to be perfect, that's going to be amazing. The real skill here is simply being able to not be married to these things that you put a lot of time and effort into, because then you can kind of get a perspective where you're not biased. You know, you can actually say to yourself, okay, this isn't great, this doesn't work, so I need to change this. So remember, most people quit in this phase, and the ones who win stay consistent and they keep refining. Growth comes from iteration and not perfection. That is just the whole point of this video. Growth comes from iteration and not perfection, especially if you're in an early days of development, of growth. And even bigger businesses, they're not always perfect. They don't always strive for perfection, but they've just iterated and they've repeated and they've gone over and over and over again for a long period of time. But if you're starting out, don't be afraid to make content that isn't great. Don't be afraid to, you know, put something out there because you feel it's not perfect. Done is always better than perfect. And if you're waiting for a perfect time, or if you're waiting for something to be perfect, it's never going to happen, because you can only perfect things by doing it over and over and over again. So if you got any value from this, please like, comment, subscribe. Check out Hendrick Academy. It's an online music business school where we can help you build, grow, and scale your music business. My name is Gwethan. I am the founder of all of this, and it is my mission to deliver as much value as possible as I can and to really help you, because I know how hard it is to survive in this industry. I know how hard it is to take an idea from your mind and build it into a real business, and that is exactly why I've made it my life purpose to help people do exactly that. So in the next video, we're going to be talking all about scaling a business, which is the step after growth, and I will see you then. Again, please like, comment, subscribe, show your love, give your feedback, tell me what isn't perfect about this, give me data, give me feedback so that I can clearly understand what you need help with, what you need value, what value you need, because ultimately YouTube's free. But if you tell me what you're struggling with, if you're telling me what you like, what you don't like, what you don't understand, then I can make these videos to help you better. So again, if you're still watching this, I am insanely proud of you. I have been waffling for 20 minutes now, so I'm gonna head off. But like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.